We're going to examine a very curious case of a gentleman that is being pursued by the law for operating Bitcoin ATMs and Bitcoin kiosks. Let's dive into this. This is really a follow-up to an ongoing story that started a few years ago, and this was an article that is published by CoinDesk December 6th, 2022. And here we go. Early Bitcoin pioneer and libertarian activist Ian Freeman is standing trial in New Hampshire this week to face charges that he operated an unlicensed money transmitting business and laundered money by selling Bitcoin for cash. Unlicensed money transmitting business, and that he was laundering money by selling Bitcoin for cash. Okay. Anyways, let's dive into this story. Freeman is facing 8 counts related to tax evasion and operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. As we all know, the government doesn't like any competition, especially when it comes to money. So we've said this in the past. Essentially, the powers that be are 100% going to try to make examples out of people that are attempting to create Bitcoin businesses. And a lot of the times they're going to go after these people that are seen as low-hanging fruit. Concord, New Hampshire, federal prosecutors say early Bitcoin pioneer and libertarian activist Ian Freeman and a group of his associates helped scammers and other criminals launder more than $10 million using Bitcoin through a network of Bitcoin vending machines and in-person and virtual cash for Bitcoin trades from 2016 until their arrests in 2021. So what evidence do we even have? Just in that first line, what evidence do we even have that he was a part of this? All I understand so far is that this gentleman operated Bitcoin ATMs. I don't think he's liable for anything that anybody did with those Bitcoin ATMs. That is their choice, what they choose to do. And this is where the muddy waters can start to cause problems. Anyways, I'm going to continue. Freeman is standing trial in New Hampshire this week to face federal charges related to tax evasion and the operation of an unlicensed money transmitting business. Freeman, the host of the Free Talk Live radio show and a one-time member of the libertarian migration movement, the Free State Project, has maintained his innocence and has described the charges against him as politically motivated and the trial as a sham. In March 2021, gun-wielding agents surrounded the Keene, New Hampshire home, crashing through a first-floor window with an armored car. They seized property from the residence, including $180,000 in cash, coins and bars made of precious metals, and 2 physical Casascius Bitcoins worth a combined 101 Bitcoin. Yeah, they shouldn't have the S over there. Anyways. But look, I just want to point out here, this gentleman, all he's done right now has operated Bitcoin kiosks and vending machines. Okay, he hasn't actually done anything wrong. He hasn't harmed anyone else. But to this point, the government has now enacted violence upon him. So the violence that was done was from the law enforcement towards him. Anyways, I just find it amusing that we contract the state for violence. It's just awful. And we think that somehow they're going to be better than an individual human being. Somehow you put multiple human beings together and you give them power and you think that's going to make them not shitty. I don't ever think that's going to make them not shitty. Anyways, okay. Prosecutors told the New Hampshire jury that Freeman was the ringleader of the illegal crypto selling business. Ah, that's right. We're going to demonize him. He sold Bitcoin and God, he's evil. Okay. Freeman didn't ask a lot of questions of his customers, prosecutors told the jury, but charged his customers a premium, usually between 10 and 15% for their privacy. That's right, folks. All of a sudden, privacy is a crime. If you demand privacy, that is a crime and you have things to hide. Okay. The only people who have nothing to hide are the people who don't demand privacy. And see, that's nonsensical bullshit. And that is the type of crap. That is the type of crap that the government desperately needs you to believe. Okay. That's the type of crap that they need you to believe. Customers of Freeman's virtual cash for Bitcoin's business, whom prosecutors say includes scammers, preying on the elderly with romance scams or Nigerian prince scams, were allegedly directed to send money to one of the bank accounts associated with the Crypto 6, using descriptions like purchase of rare coins or to avoid flagging the attention of the banks. So you see, here they have to mention, right, that scammers are using the service. So don't get me wrong. It's perfectly fine that scammers, right? Scammers use, obviously they use cash. They use the banking rails. We've seen that time and time again. We're actually going to take a look a little bit later on at some of the worst money laundering in history and who it was done. But in order to help discredit this person, this information has to be inserted here, okay? That the people that were using his services, they were scammers, right? There's no decent people that would want to save their money in something that doesn't get devalued and debased by the government. That's nonsense, okay? If you're a good patriot, then you take that debasement. That's what it means. Anyways, I'm sorry. Stuff like this just pisses me off so much. When Freeman's lawyer, Mark Sisti, addressed the jury during his opening statements on Tuesday, he told them that what they'd heard from McDonald was absolute nonsense and accused the government of intentionally leaving out details that did not benefit their case against Freeman. Just because it's the federal government and just because it's an assistant U.S. attorney saying it doesn't make it true, Sisti told the jury. Just because it's an FBI investigation doesn't make it credible. Sisti described Freeman as a gentle, nonviolent man who helped victims of scams rather than perpetrating them, and had even helped with crypto-related investigations. The churches implicated in his operation were real institutions, Sisti argued, which had done things like set up an orphanage in Uganda and helped local businesses in New Hampshire set up Bitcoin payment systems. And of course, I'm going to be biased. I'm a Bitcoiner, but being a Bitcoiner and having met other Bitcoiners, I am significantly more inclined to believe that he was doing good things with the Bitcoin businesses, and he was trying to educate others. At least that's been my experience in the last 5 years meeting Bitcoiners. But I digress. It's just absolutely insane, right? That they paint him as such a villain for really, at the end of the day, simply providing competition to a system that robs you. Sisti said Freeman often declined to do business with suspicious customers, including an undercover agent who claimed to be a heroin dealer. Sisti said the agent put $20,000 in one of Freeman's Bitcoin kiosks, even after Freeman told him he wouldn't do business with him in person as he'd requested. Just so people understand, for reference, McDonald is the lawyer for the prosecution. McDonald told you he had said no one before this clown went to a vending machine without Freeman's permission, by the way, and dumped $20,000, Sisti said. What's he supposed to do? Put an armed guard in front of his vending machine? Sisti also pushed back against McDonald's assertions that Freeman ignored red flags in his customers and looked the other way when dealing with scammers. He referenced the case of one potential witness, a 76-year-old woman who over 6 days transferred her entire life savings, $755,000, to a romance scammer who then allegedly traded the cash for Bitcoin. What bank did the little old lady use? Sisti wondered aloud to the jury. That was so highly regulated, yet missed the classic red flags of her pulling out enormous sums of money in less than a week. That's exactly right. Okay? They're blaming Ian Freeman. But the reality is that, and I know this because having moved from Canada to the US, let me tell you something. When you start moving sums of money that are over a certain amount, it gets flagged immediately. But for some reason, all the checks and balances were missed on this one, right? They're just completely missed by these institutions that are highly regulated. Let's talk about these institutions that are highly regulated for a second. Here we've got the 9 most famous money laundering examples of the past 50 years. Because, right, the banks, they're looking out for your best interest, they're looking out for my best interest. They're doing what's right for us. Well, let's take a look at some of the biggest scams. So number 1, we've got BCCI. Throughout the 1980s, BCCI did business with criminals all over the world, according to the U.S. intelligence documents. Its clients included dictators Saddam Hussein and Manuel Noriega, as well as members of Pablo Escobar's notorious Mexican drug cartel notorious. That's terrible. Anyways, the illegal funds totaled billions of dollars, and BCCI used various methods to conceal them. It passed them through the shell companies, legal entities that exist only on paper. It operated extensively in bank secrecy havens. Okay, so that's number one. All right, look, number 3 on the list, Wachovia. Number 4 on the list, HSBC. In 2012, the U.S. Department of Justice charged the international bank HSBC with 4 felonies related to money laundering. It said HSBC had processed funds for 2 groups of bad actors, rogue nations, and drug cartels. HSBC processed at least $881 million from drug traffickers in Mexico and Colombia through wire transfers and currency exchanges. But wait, it's not over. HSBC paid over $1.9 billion in penalties. It's pay to play, people. And agreed to 5 years of independent monitoring. Oh, that's right. Slap you on the wrist. You bad HSBC, bad pay to player. You got caught. However, this agreement was a sham. Oh my God, huge shock. As a subsequent case dubbed the FinCEN files revealed, HSBC continued to accept shady transactions, even while under probation. In a 2017 report to shareholders, the bank admitted it was not yet adequately managing financial crime risk. Okay? And take a look at the 5th, Standard Chartered Bank. Okay? So out of the top 5, out of the top 5 money laundering scandals, 4 of them are banks. 4 of them are the enforcers. These people are enforcing the checks and balances. This is psychotic. This is completely psychotic. So now we're going to move on to the tax evasion. Freeman also faces 4 counts of tax evasion, okay? Because he attempted to evade taxes from 2016 to 2019. As the industry has matured and grown, it has attracted the attention of both mainstream investors and regulators and has subsequently undergone a makeover. New crypto is, at least in appearance, regulated and polished. And polished turd. And many industry leaders like Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, in brackets, enemy of Bitcoin, work hand in glove with the US government. Hand in glove, all right. Bitcoin as currency is increasingly uncommon, and as is intentionally picking fights with regulators, making Freeman and those like him feel like relics of Bitcoin's crypto-anarchist past. That's right, guys. You just got to shut up and take it. Okay? KYC, all of that, it's good for us. It's good for you. It's good for me. And we just got to do what we're told. So forget about this whole freedom money. Freeman's trial, which began Tuesday, is slated to last approximately 3 weeks, with both sides listing dozens of potential witnesses. Though prosecutors dropped 17 of the initial 25 felony charges against Freeman ahead of the trial, the 8 remaining counts carry a weighty 70-year maximum penalty if Freeman is found guilty. So at the end of the day, what did we understand here? This gentleman, he owned Bitcoin kiosks and Bitcoin ATMs. I don't really see why this gentleman has to stand trial for 70 years when I just showed you guys 4 out of the 5 biggest money laundering scams. It was actually out of the 9, but it was 4 out of the top 5 that were all done by the biggest banks who are tasked essentially by the government to act like gatekeepers for our money. We're supposed to be able to trust them, and this is what they do. And I'll tell you something, the thing that really bothers me about all of this is KYC AML. It's very difficult because, from the day that we're born, we are technically KYC'd. There's going to be a paper trail, and the longer we live, the longer the paper trail becomes. And we fall for these ridiculous notions that KYC and AML, with KYC, which is know your customer. And essentially that is when a company gathers a certain amount of data about you, certain data points that they can prove your identity with. Usually they're going to use something like your driver's license, or they're going to use your passport. They're going to ask something along those lines. Quite often when you go to a bank and you go set up a bank account, you can't just go and set up a bank account because it is an exclusionary system, right? Unlike Bitcoin, which you can mine or you can earn and people can just send it to you. You don't need to show anybody an ID. with the current system, when you go set up a bank account and you want to receive funds from an employer, you go through a KYC process, and the bank is going to know who you are, your employer is going to know who you are, and you are going to provide both of them multiple data points. Now, the idea is that through all of this KYC, we are going to be protected. This is supposed to help us and ensure that we are not going to be taken advantage of and that we are going to be protected from quote unquote scammers. So it's extremely disheartening when you go through articles like this and you read about this person who has decided to embrace a brand new technology. A lot of these early technologies were misunderstood at the beginning, okay? And you're not going to arrest somebody just for using a pager. You're not going to arrest somebody for using the internet. You're not going to arrest somebody just for using a cell phone. So my point being, this gentleman decided to operate Bitcoin ATMs. The real issue here is that the current system wants to make an example out of him. That is the only issue, okay? And they want us to believe that had he had been following the rules and KYCing the customers, whoever it was that they are claiming was scammed would have been prevented. If he just would have been doing proper KYC and he wasn't trying to evade the law, supposedly, right? Again, supposedly. I don't believe he was evading the law. I believe that he was operating Bitcoin ATMs, and I believe that he was trying to educate people on freedom money.